Going to party like it's 1999, the last video of the 90s for Marvel. Marvel 1999 top comics coming up here on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hey there, comic book community. This is Jim with Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video, and we're delving into another top 10 list. This time, Marvel Comics 1999. If you like the content here on the channel, please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. Let me know if you have these books, if you want these books, and what you think of them. So, Marvel had a really big downturn in the bust of the 1990s after the huge boom of the early 90s, filing for bankruptcy in 97, and they were just starting to get back on their feet. And for the most part, it was the new Marvel Knights imprint that was getting them started. They had restarted almost all of their flagship titles, including Spider-Man, which was being drawn by John Byrne. But Byrne's run currently on Spider-Man wasn't producing any new characters, and that's what really drives these lists, especially with books from the 90s that did have really fairly high print runs, and people were collecting them. It's either finding books that have low print runs or have characters that kind of have surprised people with first appearances. Also, the Marvel Knights imprint included books like Daredevil. There were other books that would be included in the next couple of years: Black Widow, The Inhumans, Blade, that were geared towards a little more mature audiences. So, the way that I've taken these lists is, I know there are some lists where they look at the biggest sale in any individual book. So if it's a signature series, if it's a 9.9, if it's a variant cover or an error, I stick to the cover A 9.8, and that's how I rank these books for the most part, and I'm looking for multiple sales. Now, it does get a little tougher in 99 when there aren't that many books graded in a 9.8 being sold frequently. If it's a one-off sale in 9.8, that could definitely be an aberration. One sale of like $150 in 9.8 doesn't mean that if you have a 9.8 of that book, you can expect to get necessarily $150 for it. There are other factors involved, and we also go over the raw prices. I do mention them, even though on the screen I'll list the CGC 9.8 sales. And it's usually sales, the 90-day average from cover price, or if there are only a handful of sales in the last year, I'll usually take the average from the entire year. So, short list, let's get started. Number 10 on the list is Astonishing X-Men #1, which has had one CGC sale back in June of 2021 for $93. In this book, Wolverine appears as the Horseman, one of the four Horsemen of Apocalypse. He appears as Death, and this is a book that is a $5 to $10 book raw. So I'm not sure it would be able to sustain that value with just a one-off sale. But this is also indicative of how, what a small number of books there are that are traded and sold this frequently. We're going to move up to number 9 on the list, and that is Galactus the Devourer #1, which did have a sale in October of 21 in a 9.8 for $85, but that was backed up with a 9.6 selling at $65 in June. Now, usually a 9.6 sells for about half of a 9.8 for books from this era, but that's back in June, so it was the height of the market. So a 9.8 comparably would have been about $130 in June, but it's going to be worth less than that today. Raw books are about $10 a piece, and in this issue, there's a new appearance of a Herald of Galactus, Red Shift. Let's move to number 8 on the list. Number 8 on the list is Wolverine Annual 1999, which has this classic cover battle between Wolverine and Deadpool. Maybe some more Deadpool, maybe some Wolverine coming to the MCU. We'll see. That did have one sale back in March of $75 in a CGC 9.8, so just less than a year ago. But it was right before the market went bananas. It's a book you could probably get $10 to $15 in a raw. And as I said, there's the $175 sale in a 9.8. We move up to number 7 on the list, and it's Black Panther #4, which had one sale in May, height of the market for $160 in a CGC 9.8. It's a book that's probably going to cost you in the neighborhood of $25 raw, and it's one of the Marvel Knights imprints. This has significance for the first full appearance of White Wolf. He did have a cameo appearance in Black Panther #3, who is a Wakandan character. Now, that name, White Wolf, has been used for Bucky Barnes in the MCU, so I don't think they would confuse that by bringing a similar character into the MCU. Although, with the Wakanda, the Black Panther 2 movie and a Wakanda Disney Plus series coming out, they're going to be drawing characters from throughout the Black Panther runs of books, other Wakandan characters. Let's move up to number 6 on the list. This is a Marvel DC team-up book, Incredible Hulk versus Superman. And it did have a 9.8 sale back in December of $130. It did have another sale for over $100 earlier in '98. So it did have backup. It's a book, $20 to $25 raw. And it has art by Steve Rude, one of my favorite artists. Very cartoony style, but very distinctive. And I do really appreciate that cover. This is one of the later Marvel DC team-ups, and of course we haven't seen one of those in quite a while because, you know, they're not really getting along. Let's move up to number 5 on the list. Now, this is a book that does have quite a few sales and it has quite a few variant covers. It's Wolverine 145, the 25th anniversary of Wolverine, and it's in this issue that he gets his adamantium back in his claws. The cover has this silver foil, again, 90s, the foil era. The regular cover sells on average CGC 9.8 for $135, probably about a $15 book raw. The regular cover sold for $150 in May, and back in January of 21, it sold for $105. But there are other covers. There's a gold foil cover, which sold for $499 in July. There's a Bill Sienkiewicz cover, which was a mail-away offer that you got through Nabisco. That in a 9.8 sold for as high as $1,700 back in September of 2019, and a 9.6 sold in August of 2021 for $1,000. So, I mean, if you come across that one, that is a really rare book to find and really pricey. There was a Chrome edition, which has a different cover. It was a Dynamic Forces cover. That's gone as high as $300. But the most recent sale in January was just $114 for a CGC 9.8. Then there is an error, which is they call it a bone white variation. Now, this isn't to be confused with the non-foil edition, which he does have silver claws, but they're not foil. This, evidently, the foil was almost entirely left out. Some of them have flecks of silver in them, where there's no silver in the claws in the cover. The claws are white. It's an error. A 9.8 of this sold in August of 2019 for $10,000. So if you come across that, that is a absolute unicorn to find. You're not that is a really rare book. So it is considered an error. I don't know how many are out there, but that one did sell like almost like 2.5 years ago for 10 grand. Let's move up to number 4 on the list. And now we're getting into books that do have a little bit of multiple sales. Fantastic Four number 15, which is an average CGC sale of $249, probably about a $10 to $15 book raw. It's the first appearance of Valeria Von Doom, who is the future daughter of Sue Richards and I think Reed. The continuity keeps changing. I haven't been a big Fantastic Four reader over the last 20 years, so I'm not positive. She's from an alternate reality. I think Reed is her father. Victor Von Doom's her godfather. She's the younger, sometimes, depending on time travel, sister of Franklin Richards. But she has been a character. Valeria has been a character that has been part of the Fantastic Four family for quite a time. And if we see, Fantastic Four over a period of time, they could have more than one child. Franklin and potentially Valeria. That would not be surprising. Now, the sales of this, and this does sell somewhat frequently, $295 in January and $203 in October. So this is a book, a Fantastic Four 15 mid-run Fantastic Four book from the late 90s. It's a book that you probably, can find, but it is a key first appearance, and people who know comics will price that appropriately, but it's some you might be able to find in a garage sale or something. Let's move up to number 3 on the list, and you're going to see a lot of recent MCU reveals, characters on the rest of this list. Number 3 is Black Widow =1, a Marvel Knights imprint book. This is a book that sells for an average of $360 in a CGC 9.8, $37 for a raw book. And it's a 3-issue miniseries, the first issue of a 3-issue miniseries with Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova. It's where Yelena Belova's identity is first revealed, and we get the first mention of the Red Room. Played a prominent role in the Black Widow movie. And Yelena Belova, we saw her in the Black Widow movie. We saw her again in Hawkeye. We're going to see her again. Frances Pugh has just been killing the role. People love that character, and I'm sure that Marvel is going to make the most of her. This has had sales just in January of $432 and $335. A high sale, August of 2021, of $709. There are 2 alternate covers. There's a Dynamic Forces cover, which sold in January for $870 in a CGC 9.8, with a high of $1,425 back in July. And there's a Yelena Belova cover, art by J.G. Jones, which sells frequently. It's sold in December when she appeared in Hawkeye between $500 and $550 pretty consistently. Several sales in that range, and a high sale in June of $700. Speaking of the Hawkeye miniseries, let's move to number 2 on the list. And that, another Marvel Knights book, Daredevil #9, the first appearance of Maya Lopez, who would become Echo. This was a December 1999 book, so the next 2 issues in the Daredevil run are 2000 books. We'll get to that at some point in the future on a list, hopefully. The 2002 sale, the average CGC sale in a 9.8 is $543. The average sale for a raw book, according to Cover Price, is $163. 2002, all the sales have been between $500 and $592. The high sale back in April of 2021 was $1,099. Now, we did see, she does have other key appearances, first appearance as Echo, or referred to as Echo, in 10 and 11 of Daredevil. But this is the first appearance of the Maya Lopez character. Number 1 on the list, we're staying in the same zone, and it's Inhumans #5, another Marvel Knights book. It's the first appearance of Yelena Belova. This is a book that sells for $628 on an average in a CGC 9.8, and the average raw sale is $143. Raw is a little bit less than the Maya Lopez book, but the CGC 9.8 a little bit more. I think these 2 books are probably fairly comparable. Probably the Inhumans book spiked a little bit earlier because she appeared in the Black Widow movie, and we didn't see Maya Lopez until the Hawkeye TV series. Echo's going to get her own show. We're going to see her again. Anyway, back to Yelena Belova and Inhumans 5. There was a $700 sale in January 2022. That's the most recent sale. And the high sale was $899 in September. Let's talk about some. So I think both of these top 3 books, actually the top 4, the Fantastic Four 15, if you can get it below fair market value, is a really good book to find, because Valeria Von Doom, Valeria Richards, I think there's a good chance we're going to see that character at some point in the MCU. We're going to have the FF in for the long run. I don't think it's just going to be in one movie. We do already have Echo and Yelena Belova's Black Widow, so their early appearances, I think, are going to definitely hold value. I wouldn't pay high to the market for these, but if you could find a raw book that you think you might be, reasonably priced below fair market value, that might be a good way to go. Let's go to the honorable mentions. There aren't many. Spider-Woman #1 did have a CGC sale of $80 back in October 2020, but it's probably a $5 book raw. It is the origin of Maddie Franklin, the third Spider-Woman. With the Spider-Verse, who knows how many Spider-Women or girls we can see, but we haven't seen any yet. Is it going to be Julia Carpenter? Is it going to be Jessica Drew? Mayday Parker? Maybe some amalgam of these characters. So that's an interesting book to look at. Also, on our honorable mentions, A-Next number 4. This is, so we talked about in the 1998 video, Spider-Girl. In What If number 105, she's Mayday Parker, the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane from an alternate future. Marvel did a whole series of books set in that alternate future. A-Next was the team book. They had J2, who was the son of Juggernaut, and Spider-Girl had a long-running series. A-Next lasted 12 issues. I have 11. I can't find 12. I'm guessing the print counts weren't very high. Every time I go to a show, looking for A-Next 12, can't find it. Anyway, number 4 has the first appearance of American Dream, who's a version of Captain America. We see her here on the cover, and that is Shannon Carter, the niece of Sharon Carter. And I guess if we ever see her in the MCU, she'd be the grand niece of Peggy Carter? Once removed? I don't know. Because Sharon is Peggy's niece. So her niece would be the grandniece? Yeah, I guess the grandniece, because Sharon would have to be the daughter of Peggy's brother to have the Carter last name, right? Anyway, it also has the first appearance of the Coal Tiger, who's T'Chaka, the son of Black Panther. In this alternate reality, we haven't seen much of these characters in Marvel recently. And so I'm not sure if any of them are worth specking on. A-Next does have some appearances of, is it, I think it's Hope Van Dyne, the daughter of Wasp and Yellow Jacket? Yes. We have seen that character because the Wasp that we see in the MCU really isn't a character that was in Marvel 616. So, yeah, that A-Next series is one of that whole, I think they call it the A2 reality. So anyway, the last one I'm going to point out on the list is Blade Vampire Hunter number 1. Ongoing series. Was it an ongoing series? I think it was a miniseries for Blade. He had a lot of number 1s back in the late 90s. This is a book, $20 to $25 raw, and there is a variant cover with art by Bart Sears. It's a white cover. It's had a handful of sales. There was a 9.8 sale that sold for $150 in January 2020, a couple of years ago. But a 9.6 sold in January of this year for $406. Blade is going to be in the MCU. We know that for sure. And I think these Blade books are going to start heating up, especially the variant covers. Variant covers were just starting to occur in the late 90s with any regularity. And there's some pretty cool Blade variant covers. So variant covers in the late 90s weren't nearly as plentiful as they are today. Some of those are interesting to search out for, and I don't see them sold a lot, and I think some of them that go for fairly high prices in raw go infrequently in graded copies. So Blade, with several issues, does have some really cool variant covers because remember, he had just become popular because the Wesley Snipes-led movies had just come out. That's it for our list from 1999. Let us know what you think about the comics on this list. What were you doing in comic collecting in 1999? I was actually starting to pare down what I was collecting. This is the last Marvel video of the 90s. We've gone through DC, we've gone through Marvel, and now I have my work cut out for me because up next is Independence. And that is going to require quite a bit of research because there are a lot of different companies and a lot of harder books to find. But I think that'll be a lot of fun to go through. I'm going to go through the 90s, and then I need to decide what decade is next. In the meantime, check out some of my other videos. This is going to be Marvel from 98, and here's DC 99. See what we can compare there. And this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.